Hi, friends. So, I am not the sort of person who cries easily. Some people are. Um, I'm not, but there are a couple things in the last couple days that did make me cry. One of them was Disney's Encanto, which was delightful and really really spoke to something in me. I think it's a wonderful example of the old storytelling lesson that if you tell something, if you go specific and careful, very very specific, you can speak to something universal, and that's what they did. I highly recommend watching it, and at least you should listen to this one song sung by this character Louisa, who I love anyway because she's a wonderful representation of a bigger woman in a Disney film, who is also beautiful. Anyway, the lyrics are how, although she appears on the surface to have everything together and be strong and powerful, beneath that, she's struggling. She's under a lot of pressure and doesn't know who she is aside from her work and what she does for everyone and trying to hold things together. It's one of the through lines of the story that beneath, strong and impressive people, there is still a human who may be struggling. And speaking of that, the other thing that made me cry was Lindsay Ellis's letter. If you haven't read it, I'll link the tweet. You should read it. It's difficult to read, but you should read it. Essentially, it is Lindsay's letter of resignation from YouTube, from Twitter, I think from the whole public sphere, though I hope she continues to write. And honestly, it's no wonder that she wants to get away from the public eye. It has been very cruel to her. There was an incredibly toxic mobbing incident on Twitter, and there's been other stuff before. She's been the target of reactionary trolls. And really, her whole career, I mean, she pioneered this format of doing cultural criticism and trying to mix, some academic rigor with, pathos, and with trying to say something from human to human using media. She really put herself out there. And being a woman and a feminist online is not easy. And when she was doing it, there were far fewer people doing it. Gods didn't it cost her. She carried a heavy load. So many people, I think, forgot the person at the center. That she is a person, not a hero or a monster, just a person under pressure. And so she has taken her bow, and she has left this space, and I wish her peace. But we're still here. We're still engaging in cultural critique. We're still engaging with each other. And if we're going to do that, then we have to start asking some questions. How do we celebrate people whose work we admire and still remember that they're humans? How do we critique people's work responsibly? How do we criticize people's actions responsibly? How do we respond when we're criticized? So much of this has to do, I think, with the danger of dehumanizing. And it's a thing that can work both ways. You can dehumanize someone by treating them as less than human, or by treating them as more than human. And both is really not good. My platform is still really small, but still sometimes I get overly flattering comments that kind of freak me out. Like, I love when my work speaks to someone, but my work isn't me. I made it, and it's part of me, but it's not all of me, and the meaning that you get from it is also partly you. I know the way that that happens can sometimes put a glamour on the work, or that our brain wants to attribute to the person speaking the words, and imagine that there's something special and magical about the person who spoke to us, when the magic is a thing that happens between us. Because I go to the theater and has also worked in the theater, I know I see that glamour, and I see the glamour on stage, and I know also, I know that it's like a thing that is not, that the people who are on stage are, like, I know that they are just ordinary people who I will meet after. And yet still, when they're on and the magic is happening, it's still magic. But again, that's the nature of interacting, not something that actually makes them more than what they are, or that would make them less than what they are if, the magic wasn't happening and, and I just didn't like the play. Because the same thing can happen when a work upsets us. Our brain wants us to imagine ill intent on behalf of the creator, and like see them as emblematic of the problem, and not like that there is a problem in the work, or that the problem comes from, maybe comes from humans who are hurting other humans. Depends on, like, there's a lot of different kinds of ways we can get upset by work. But the thing is, we need to be able to critique people's work and talk about some people's actions, especially in the progressive sphere, where we are trying to address systemic problems and biases that get into all of us, and we don't see the ones that we're not aware that we have. We can all do things that cause harm when we don't know where our biases are, and so we need to be able to call each other in, not out. We need to be able to say, hey, you missed an important thing. Hey, have you considered this angle? Hey, are you sure that's the way you want to word the thing? But how do we do that responsibly? Because if everybody is doing it, then it's just going to feel like an avalanche. So how do we know? Are enough people saying the thing? Am I the person who should say the thing? Do I need to add my voice to this, or don't I? Like, am I the one who should be speaking on this thing now? And it's really hard to judge that. It's really hard to judge that in spaces like Twitter and YouTube, where engagement is the thing, and the algorithm is trying to make you feel like you have to comment urgently. Like, am I the one who should be speaking on this right now? I don't know, but I feel like I need to say something, and hopefully it'll resonate with some people. So in the fall, I made a video critiquing the work of a big YouTuber. It was a really hard video to make because it was a thing I felt I needed to say, and I needed to say it, that I had something to add. But I was intensely aware that I was critiquing someone else's work in the public sphere, and just how fraught a space that was. And if I'd known it was going to get as much attention as it got, God, I don't know if I would have done it. I know there are definitely ways I would have done it differently. Because it's really hard to know if you're doing it right, but sometimes things have to be said. And I tried really hard to be clear that I was focusing on the work and not the person, and that I was trying to fill in a gap and not tear someone down. But like, that just meant that I ended up rambling a lot. So, and I think most people got what I was trying to do. Some people didn't. Some people definitely saw me as criticizing their favorite person. And others, I think, wanted me to share their anger. I wasn't angry. It was just a part of the conversation that needed to be covered. And I really didn't know how to respond to either of those people. Um, but, I was just trying to do my best. And I know I did it imperfectly. I know I made mistakes in that video, including getting the person's pronouns wrong a couple of times. And that was a mistake. And the thing about the internet is that mistakes last. You can apologize, as I did, because I should have and I did. But the mistake is still there. In that case, the vast majority of people were very gracious and accepted my apology. But like I said, the mistake is still there. And my platform is small, so I can engage with people who criticize me in good faith because the numbers are small. But even then, it's not so easy. Like, there was actually one comment that came recently that got under my skin. And it wasn't somebody gleefully predicting my death and calling me fat, as I get those. Those are easy to delete. But someone suggested I had turf energy. And my intellectual brain knows that this is probably someone who only watched a tiny bit, and, they probably have a bad opinion of feminists for good reason. It's the TERFs who have given feminists a bad name, and the person is probably commenting from a place of pain, and it's not really about me, but boy, is it still difficult to read that. And it was hard. My brain wanted to get defensive, but I know that that's a hurt person trying to hurt people who's hurt by TERFs, who are also often hurt people who hurt people. And so it's on me to not use my hurt to hurt somebody else and continue the cycle. But that's a bit of rambling, but like that is a little of what it's like when you create on YouTube, even as a small person. Your mistakes stick around, and the people needed to be able to call me in on my mistake, just like I felt I needed to call that other person in. And in most cases that goes, in that case that went pretty well. But so often it goes so wrong. And the thing with mistakes just stick there, and you have to just keep dealing with it. There's no moving on, or it's hard to, and in my case, I'm nobody. And I kind of I kind of like it that way. I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? I do. You want to create work that speaks to people. We all do. There is this urge to create, urge to discuss, and to try and use culture, use conversation to make things better, to try and reach from one human to another. But somehow, in all the media, we can lose sight of the other person's personhood. And we can make them more than they are. And that puts so much pressure on them. Or we can imagine that they're less than they are, and that our critiques won't hurt the person. And there are some people who will respond to being criticized by just numbing themselves to it. Sometimes people have to do that. But that's not good for you either. And then there are some people who will just take it all in, and we won't see how much they're suffering. And just like Louisa, they're holding it together, and drip, 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 the pressure is getting to be too much. And if we actually want to make the culture better, we have to find a way to communicate better. We have to find a way to not forget that there's a person behind every essay, behind every tweet. There is a person. Yeah, I don't want to see another Lindsay Ellis. I mean, I would love to see more work like hers, but I don't want to see another person hurt like that. I don't want to see another person feel such regret for the work that they did and for the actions they took, because so many of her actions should not be regretted. She inspired so many of us. Even if we weren't inspired to do this like I was, we were inspired to look at films differently. So I deeply hope that Lindsay Ellis is somewhere with people who love her, getting a good old rest, because clearly she needs it. But we're still here, and we have a responsibility to make the discourse better. So we need to have that conversation. And I know a lot of us probably have our own little rules about how we engage with social media and stuff, but individual rules aren't going to cut it. We need to have a wider conversation about media literacy and about how we have conversations. So I don't know that this video did much to add to that conversation, but hopefully it did. And I'm just going to leave you with a quote from Terry Pratchett, because I'm me and I love Terry Pratchett. Carpe Jungulum. Granny Weatherwax says to this Omnian priest, "Sin, young man, is when you treat people as things." So yeah, let's not treat other people as things. Goodbye, Lindsay. And good luck to all of us.